Welcome to Preservation Oaks, the podcast where we invite you to step away from the bustle of everyday life. Settle in and relax, and take a moment to leave the familiar behind as we explore the hidden gems of America that preserve our cultural past. We call them our Preservation Oaks, and with each episode, we'll journey to a different corner of the country, where we'll discover the unique histories, landscapes, and communities that make up our nation. We'll visit with local museums, historical and genealogical societies. They are the stewards of these stories. They preserve the legacy of each place like precious pieces of fabric in a quilt that binds the freedom-loving, hardworking people in this country together. So, slow down, grab a beverage, open your mind, and let us take you on a tour of the fascinating histories and heartfelt traditions that lie just beyond the horizon. This is Preservation Oaks, where every story is a stitch in the fabric of our shared culture. Now, join our host, Sean Radcliff, as he uncovers another thread in the tapestry of America's heritage and what it takes to preserve it.
Welcome. I hope everyone's Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays were just excellent. I know mine were. This is our New Year's episode, so Happy New Year, everyone. We have a great program for you today, and I'm excited to get to learn about Sanilac County in Port Sanilac, Michigan. Get ready for a fascinating journey back in time as we welcome Mr. Dan Finn, the administrator of the Sanilac County Historical Village and Museum. Nestled in the charming town of Port Sanilac, Michigan, this unique destination is more than just a museum. It's a time capsule that brings history to life. There's a Victorian mansion, a one-room schoolhouse, even a general store from the turn of the century, and many other buildings. There's even a community theater on the property. Operated by the dedicated and passionate Sanilac County Historical Society, this vibrant historical village is a must-see for anyone curious about Michigan's rich past. Open from Memorial Day through Labor Day, the museum offers guided tours that make history come alive, as well as self-guided tours for those who prefer to explore at their own pace. Even when the season ends, the village grounds remain open year-round from dawn to dusk, inviting you to stroll through history any day of the week. Plus, their archives and genealogy resources are perfect for anyone tracing their family roots or uncovering fascinating local stories. Got a special event coming up? The museum's picturesque church, elegant mansion, and other charming venues are available for weddings, receptions, or private parties. Imagine celebrating milestones surrounded by history. It's an experience like no other. And the best part, this incredible organization is dedicated to preserving and sharing Sanilac County's history in ways that are engaging, inspiring, and accessible to all. Whether you're a history buff, a curious traveler, or just looking for a unique day out, the Sanilac County Historical Village and Museum has something for you. By the end of this episode, you'll not only want to visit, but join them in their mission to collect, preserve, and celebrate the stories and heritage of Sanilac County and beyond. By the way, our main platform is preservationoaks.podbean.com, but you can find us on nearly all podcast platforms as well as Rumble, Genealogical, Social, Blue Sky, Mastodon, Getter, Minds, TikTok, Facebook, Odyssey, and YouTube. So wherever you listen to the program, I appreciate it very much when you like, comment, follow, or subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on our program, or if you have questions or comments, please feel free to email us at preservationoaks@gmail.com. Hey, a big shout out to all of you who've been spreading the word about our program. Your support means the world to us. By helping us reach more people, you are shining a spotlight on the incredible heroes of Preservation Oaks and giving them the recognition they truly deserve. So thank you for being awesome. Our Preservation Oak organizations and the people who volunteer and operate them are the superheroes of our nation, working tirelessly to safeguard our heritage and make sure future generations can learn from the past. And guess what? You can be a hero too, just by sharing our program and helping it grow you're joining the mission to support these incredible efforts. Hey, and a special shout out to our listeners in Singapore and Brazil. Outside of the US, these two countries have the highest listenership worldwide. We just want to say hello and thank you. Thank you, Singapore, or in Malay, Terima kasih Singapura, and thank you, Brazil, or in Portuguese, Obrigado, Brazil. So let's keep the momentum going. Spread the word, support your local historical or genealogical organization or museum, and together we can make sure our rich heritage is preserved for generations to come. Thank you for being part of this amazing journey. Now I'd like to tell you about the next awesome episode of Preservation Oaks. We'll be diving into the rich history of Zeeland, Michigan, with none other than Caitlin Bosch Bermeris, director of the Zeeland Historical Society. The society runs two amazing historic gems, a museum housed in a building from 1876 and an 1881 schoolhouse. These spots are a total must-see if you're anywhere near Zeeland. Seriously, they're like stepping into a time machine that takes you straight into the past. What blows my mind about this organization is how they connect the dots between past, present, and future. They're not just preserving history, they're making it come alive to inspire new generations of Zeelanders and beyond. Did you know Zeeland's name comes from the Dutch province of Zeeland? It's a small but vibrant town in Ottawa County with just over 5,700 people. We'll explore its unique history, charm, and the stories that make it such a special place to visit or call home. This episode is going to be packed with history, heart, and some fun surprises, so don't miss it. All right, that being said, let's get this show snapping. Let's dive in. I'd like you to meet Dan Finn. Our guest today is a hometown hero with a global twist. Dan Finn's journey is anything but ordinary. Born and raised in Armada, Michigan, he's a proud alumnus of the Armada Area School District and a graduate of Wayne State University, where he earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater and Performance Studies. But Dan didn't stop there. He took his talents around the globe, traveling to Berlin, Jerusalem, Moscow, Malawi, Zurich, and more. His global adventures shaped his perspective and fueled his passion for connecting people, culture, and community. After his travels, Dan set his sights on making a difference in the museum world, sharpening his skills as a docent at the iconic Edsel and Eleanor Ford House, and as an event and education production assistant at the Edgy Museum of Contemporary Art, Detroit. By 2021, Dan had found his calling in Sanilac County, moving there with a dream to serve the local community and build a life with his family. Dan is the kind of guy who doesn't just live in a community, he becomes part of its heartbeat. He's volunteered as a coach for the Carsonville Port Sanilac Schools Cross Country Club and an elementary fall running club, spreading his love for the outdoors and mentoring young athletes. Beyond sports, Dan has taken leadership roles in nonprofits, civic organizations, and economic development efforts, showing his dedication to strengthening Sanilac County in every way possible. And here's where it gets even cooler. In 2023, Dan opened Sanilac Coffee, Port Sanilac's own local coffee shop, a cozy space for neighbors, visitors, and friends to gather. That same year, he took on another exciting role as administrator for the Sanilac County Historic Village and Museum, where he's helping preserve the area's rich history and share it with the community. Whether he's brewing a perfect cup of coffee, coaching young runners, or preserving the stories of the past, Dan Finn is all about making an impact. With his creative energy and commitment to community, he's inspiring others to dream big, dig deep, and stay connected, whether it's to the history of Sanilac County or to one another. Want to see Dan's work in action? Swing by Sanilac Coffee for a cup of local flavor, and visit the Sanilac County Historic Village and Museum to experience the vibrant history he's working so hard to protect and promote. Dan Finn isn't just shaping the future of Sanilac County, he's inviting everyone to be a part of it. All right, folks, this is our New Year's episode, and we're rolling into 2025. fully caffeinated, and cautiously optimistic. Will this be the year, with the help of AI, that we finally conquer our email inboxes once and for all? Could we agree collectively to stop buying gadgets that promise to simplify our lives but end up requiring their own instruction manual? And most importantly, could 2025 be the year that museums, historical societies, and genealogical societies crack the code to make history TikTok famous? One can only dream. A new year is like a fresh slate, an exciting opportunity to learn, uncover hidden stories, and maybe even start volunteering at your local museum or historical society. These organizations are the beating heart of our communities, preserving our stories for future generations. So now, grab your coziest spot, pour yourself a warm, peaceful cup of tea or coffee, and let's settle in together. We're starting 2025 with history, wit, and a whole lot of heart. Today we're chatting with Dan Finn as we explore the charm of Sanilac County, Michigan, and dive into the incredible work of the Sanilac County Historical Society and their delightful historic village and museum. This is a perfect moment to relax and let history come alive. So let's dive in. Welcome to the program, Dan Finn, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Sean.
Hey, do you have any snow there in Sanilac County, Michigan yet this year?
Yeah, we had a little bit of snow already. It covered the entire landscape and it was picturesque. We had some holiday celebrations right on time for the snow, so it really set the mood for the holiday season. But it since melted, but we're set to get some more snow next week.
Oh, fantastic. Here in Salt Lake City, we really embrace snow, but we're about 43% of what we normally get. But all of our ski resorts are open. We've got 23 to 29 inches down on the ground, and things are going great up there in the mountains.
Yeah, it's quite the contrast. Our ski resorts are decommissioned landfills. So,
Oh, really?
because Michigan is a flat land.
Oh, yeah. So you build up like mountains out of trash and then cover them with dirt?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and
very
then
cool.
then when they're decommissioned, they make them into ski mountains.
Oh, that's really cool. Really cool. Huh. I wonder if does methane gas come up through there since it's a landfill?
Yeah, they harvest methane gas in a lot of those. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. What technology we have these days. So let's learn about Port Sanilac. What makes Port Sanilac unique compared to other towns in Michigan?
Well, we're right on the thumb, which is a peninsula on a peninsula, and Port Sanilac is right in splendor view of Lake Huron. And what makes us unique when we compare ourselves to Lexington, Michigan, just south of us, we're more of a quiet hometown charm. And that is contrasted again to Lexington because there's more businesses and industry and tourist traffic. And when you drive just a few more miles north to Port Sanilac, the frequency just shifts to be much slower. People are more personable. They take the time, they say hello, they smile. Not saying that they're not friendly in Lexington, but it's just a much quieter and slower pace in Port Sanilac.
Yeah, nice. And you own a coffee shop there in Port Sanilac, right?
Yeah, I do.
Very nice. Nice place to hang out, have chats, have a nice cup of coffee.
Yeah, and it's also a place where hopefully we can continue to be a hub for art and be trendsetters for things that represent rural Michigan.
Oh, yeah, you hang art on the walls, huh?
Yeah, I also have 7 murals outside of the building.
Wow, very cool. Very cool. I bet that's nice and relaxing. And it's called Sanilac Coffee?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Everybody run down to Sanilac Coffee, get yourself a nice brew. That's great. Dan, how did you personally get involved with the Historical Society?
So I was already being involved with Port Sanilac, working as a substitute teacher at the local school district that is in a pairing with the other town, Carsonville. So I was working for the Carsonville Port Sanilac School District as a substitute teacher working with the youth. And then I was hired by the Village of Port Sanilac to be the Parks and Recreation's coordinator for the activities and events in the town. And I was managing a summer youth program. And I had a meeting with at the time, administrator for the Sanilac County Museum, Don Malik. And we were having a meeting about including in the summer youth program a day at the museum. And I had my notes and I was trying to schedule everything to all blend with all the other programming I had. And she was observing me working on this, and a light went off in her head and she said, I think you could do my job. And I responded, "What are you talking about?" She responded, "I am planning on announcing my retirement. And I think you could be a candidate to be the next administrator for the Sanilac County Historic Village and Museum."
Wow.
I just went, "Don't even joke with me like that. That's my dream job." And sure enough, a year and a half later, I went through all the process and I started my first day in April of 2023. And so now I'm transitioned in and steering the ship, and we have many projects and programs in store.
Fantastic. That's great. Great story. What were you teaching?
I was just filling in for everything. I was the building substitute. So when there was a gap in the faculty, I was just thrown into the wolves of children, and I looked at the lesson plan and I got us through the day.
Wow, cool. So you have teaching credentials as well. That's very cool.
Maybe teaching experience. I wouldn't say that much of a credential.
Oh, okay. Well, that's got to serve you well when you're talking with people and orchestrating and administering the historic village.
Well, I carry a lot of that over with my performing arts experience after I've done several productions with film and theater and other performing arts experiences. Really can handle a crowd and present myself or whatever the script entails.
You wouldn't believe how many people can't do that. So I'm jealous of your talent.
Yeah, for me, it's like breathing water. Oh, wait, hold on. No, I handle it very well. I'm very blessed and privileged. I remember for university, we had to take a public speaking general education requirement to help the rest of the student population. And they threw a statistic up that some people would rather die than speak in front of public.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I was just snickering to myself because I was like, wow, well, I'm a very small percentile statistic here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people that just, no way, it's not happening. So lucky Port Sanilac and Sanilac County to have you.
Thank you.
Now, Dan, if you could step back in time to any moment in Sanilac County's history, when would it be?
I would really love to be around during the 1830, 1850 time when Sanilac County was just being pioneered by European settlers. It was very different than what it is today. There was a lot more wilderness, and the population of different wildlife existed that does not exist today because of the Great Thumb Fires that happened in 1871 and 1881. There was two large wildfire disasters that devastated over 1 million acres of the Thumb region. And since then, the ecosystem and habitat isn't a shelter for many species, including bears and wolves and wolverines. And so it would just be really interesting to be in Sanilac County before those significant natural disaster events. But even in the 1830s, during the pioneer times, they were beginning lumber milling. And there was a very prominent lumberjack industry at that time in the early 1800s. So to just be there right at that transition point would be a phenomenal period in time to witness.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool, with logs floating down the river and being loaded onto sailing ships. Oh, that would be tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, what we do in Sanilac County in our history is that the logs would get thrown onto the beach and then float on Lake Huron to then get put onto some freighters and then shipped down Lake Huron south to Port Huron in the St. Clair River. And then that would continue to follow south to Detroit And then from there, it can decide to continue down the Detroit River to Lake Erie. And then from there, you have the Erie Canal with the St. Lawrence Passageway. So, that was really a huge breaking point with the Erie Canal that allowed for the pioneering of Sanilac County.
Oh, yeah.
And Michigan as well.
Plus, New York City had to have firewood.
Yeah. Oh, and also just a lot of great lumber to build the infrastructure of what we knew of the mid 1800s.
Yeah. Back then, everything revolved around wood, And then
even the streets, the roads to Sanilac County were made out of wood for a period of time.
Oh, really?
From Sanilac County to Port Huron,
Wow.
It was a wood road.
Wow. Now, what's the story behind your town's establishment? How did it all start, and which significant events have played a crucial role in its development?
So there was a different name for Port Sanilac originally, and it really ties back into the lumberjack industry. The town was at one point called Bark Shanty Point, because back in the day, you can't really traverse up to the thumb of Michigan by a lumber road that well. The easiest way to get to the thumb region was by boat, going up the rivers and going through Lake Huron. So the town of Port Sanilac was known as Bark Shanty Point, and that was identified by a shanty covered in hemlock bark with a fire next to it that all of the lumberjacks, when they were taking the logs to the beach to load onto the ships to ship down for profit, they would be ripping off any remaining bark on there. And so they would have just piles and piles of bark they have to burn through. Otherwise, it's going to take up a lot of space. So there's this constant bonfire going next to this bark shanty. That was the wayfinder for the harbor that is now known as Port Sanilac. And so the sailors navigating the waters of Lake Huron, if they land ho to Bark Shanty Point, they would point at that bark shanty and they would end up in our little town. And it was shortened, the town's name, to Bark Shanty. And then one significant individual, Dr. Joseph Loop, was one of the key petitioners to change the name of Bark Shanty to the village of Port Sanilac. And that was in the late 1800s.
Where do you get the name Sanilac? Is that from a Native American tribe or something?
That's really a toss-up. Some people say it was kind of conjured out of thin air. Others say it has roots to the Native Americans of Michigan at that time. It's really inconclusive, but a lot of people do believe that Sanilac came out of some Native origin. And also, Sanilac was the name of the territory of the entire thumb before it was chartered into 3 respective counties that we recognize as the thumb today. And for your listeners who are all over the world or even all over the states, I mean, some people kind of forget that the state of Michigan resembles a mitten or a hand. And so where we reside is in the thumb of that hand in this peninsula that is carved out by the Great Lakes of America, but people call Michigan the Great Lakes state because we are adjacent to 4 of the 5 Great Lakes.
Yeah, you're right on Port Huron, and you're about 30 miles from Canada, the Canadian border.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. I hope everybody looks at their favorite map app and takes a look at Port Sanilac. It's a beautiful place. You talked about Bark Shanty and how the Port Sanilac was called Bark Shanty because of a shanty with a bonfire on the beach. You did a YouTube video on Bark Shanty days as well. They can find that on YouTube and watch that, right?
Yeah, I was on another podcast interview with Thumb Coast TV, and I was talking about one of our events that we were doing to honor the lumberjack heritage of the region, because that is essentially what brought settlements to this area. I just wanted to also touch base on the continued development of Bark Shanty, taking another story out of all this while it's still called Bark Shanty, and it ties into the museum. The museum that we operate in is known as the Loop Harrison Mansion, which was a 3-generation bloodline family that was first built by Dr. Joseph Loop and his wife, Jane. And this was the third home they lived in Bark Shanty. And they came here originally on behalf of Jane's brother-in-law. See, Jane came from a wealthy oligarch family known as the McGraw family. And on behalf of his brother-in-law, they came to Port Sanilac for the lumber industry. And they were here as a lumber baron to survey the pine timber. But that was a dime a dozen. Everybody was in Bark Shanty to shave off some barks and make shanties and cut down trees. So when they heard that Dr. Loop was there for the same business, they basically shook their heads and they said, get back on that boat and go back where you came from. But when they found out that Dr. Joseph Loop just finished his medical degree from University of Michigan, they all turned a different tune and they said, actually, we don't have a doctor for 50 square miles. Could you stay a while? And so he became known as the pioneer doctor of Sanilac. And so the home that we are now in is the third home that the family lived in. And he serviced the community of Sanilac County for his entire remainder of his life. And he was one of the key people, as I previously mentioned, who petitioned to change the name of Bark Shanty to Port Sanilac because he just felt that wasn't a very endearing name of the town. At that same time, he was a civic representative of Sanilac Township, which is the outskirting municipality that Port Sanilac resides in. So we're kind of a Matryoshka doll of Sanilac. We are Port Sanilac inside Sanilac Township inside Sanilac County. So we're several different layers of municipalities all bearing the same name of Sanilac.
Wow. That's a very cool story. Thank you. What specific characteristics of Sanilac County creates challenges and opportunities in the context of preservation?
So a huge issue that we have is just the fact that we're so remote in terms of being a rural, underserved community. And because we're so far from the port mouths of rivers and lakes, like you have Port Huron and you have Detroit, or even going even further south to Toledo, there was a war between Michigan and Ohio over Toledo because there was an economic advantage of industry in utilizing the port mouth of the river, entering the lake, and the development of that settlement.
Hey, I'd like to interject here to clarify what Dan is referring to when he says there was a war between Michigan and Ohio. The Michigan-Ohio boundary dispute resulted in the Toledo War between 1835 and 1836. In 1828, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling about this boundary dispute to clarify and ruled in favor of Ohio. However, animosity remained and simmered until in 1835 the conflict erupted more directly, with both states sending armed militias to the disputed region. There were skirmishes, arrests, and some political maneuvering. In 1836, the federal government brokered a compromise. Michigan would cede its claim to the Toledo Strip to Ohio in exchange for a larger swath of land in the Upper Peninsula, a region rich in natural resources, including copper and iron ore. This compromise was favorable to Michigan in the long term, as the resources in the Upper Peninsula would become vital to the state's economy. Okay?
And so of that history, that compounds to our economic prosperity today. And we live that today, of the fact that things are not as developed and prosperous, that it is harder to have industry in today's age, and it's harder to have a population density that has locale community that can support a nonprofit like us. So we find a lot of financial support from financial backers that are these wealthy transplants that had a career in Metro Detroit, or they had a career in some other city or a white collar job, and they're some of our biggest financial backers. But they come from not Sanilac County. And it's very hard because many people are struggling themselves in our immediate community. And The median income in this area is roughly $38,000.
Oh, wow.
So if we crowdsource our community that we are serving to protect their history and promote their heritage, they're not able to really empty their pockets or share some of the money in their pockets because they need it for their families and themselves. So we really are leaning towards the donations of the general public outside of our community and that of also state agencies for grants and foundations to distribute awards. And that's how we can continue to live out our goal for historic preservation. And we've been operating now for 60 years because I can tie back to how we all started from the Dr. Loop family. It was his grandson, Stanley Harrison, who donated this mansion to become the headquarters for Sanilac County Historical Society. And since then, we have quintupled our building population by adding a dozen buildings from all over the county's region. And so now we boast ourselves as the historic village.
Yeah,
so we're
you're
managing
like a hub because you've got lots of buildings and you've got a beautiful historic village and museum.
Right. But that also has a challenge in itself because we increase our overhead to manage those buildings, to upkeep those buildings and preserve those buildings, while also preserving the artifacts and exhibits inside. And then on top of all those expenses, we need to find the expenses to coordinate and implement educational programming and revitalizing exhibits to engage the public. So we have our hands full. We are spinning many plates on a very, very limited budget.
Yeah, I'm sure you're busy all the time. I hope you've got a lot of good volunteers there.
Oh, we have a very healthy base of volunteers. So on average, we have 150 members of our society that pay dues that help our operating budget. But we have, again, another 150 volunteers. We have a very solid core of 25 volunteers that do many things, and some people don't even overlap. But we have a building and grounds committee that manages our gardens and helps upkeep our buildings and improvements for that. We have a dinner committee. We call them our home dinner committee. They help put on our dinner fundraisers to help with a margin to support our mission. We have a tea party committee that helps program some fun little activities of tea parties throughout the year. We even have a curation, accessions, and archives committee that reviews the current status of our exhibits and how to move forward with what we have archived and our accessions of our artifacts.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you for that. I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information for the organization. You can find them on their website at sanilaccountymuseum.org. On Facebook, they're at Sanilac Museum, and Sanilac is SANILAC. Their email is sanilacmuseum@gmail.com. You can visit them at 228 South Ridge Street, Port Sanilac, Michigan, 48469, or you can send them mail to their mailing address at P.O. Box 158, Port Sanilac, Michigan, 48469. So if you want to donate and you're outside of the state or you're outside of Sanilac County, go ahead and send them a donation at P.O. Box 158, Port Sanilac, Michigan, 48469. You can also phone them at 810-622-9946. Now, Dan, what are your primary goals for 2025?
One of our goals is to have a sustainability model in attracting the next generation that can be members for the next few decades moving forward, because our membership is strong with our society, but it is on a limited lifespan because we're all not going to live forever. So we're trying to engage in a new generation of our historical society and for people to learn what we have and what we're doing in engagement with the community and our value. And one of our primary goals as well, because many other historical societies are limited to just one building, or they have an office suite somewhere that they rent, and they're not as encumbered with such a heavy plot of real estate as we do. We're property managers, as well as being a historical society to preserve and promote cultural heritage. And so we have a few projects going on that we're going to get completed. And one of those is to build a pavilion over our event space patio. We have a nice cement patio that we successfully fundraised to build a few years ago that has been a epicenter for our programming activities, and people can rent our space and we use that for additional revenue. And we've been sheltering that cement patio with an event tent. However, there's labor with putting that up and taking it down, as well as a limited lifespan on the tent canvas that you won't have as such a limited lifespan with a sturdy pavilion. So we've received a grant from the Michigan Arts and Cultures Council in tandem with the National Endowment for the Arts to build this pavilion. And we are still crowdfunding for more money to help make this a very quality product that we will be doing groundbreaking in building this spring of 2025. And once complete, it will have a PA sound system as well as lighting so that people can really exhibit a very interactive experience with concerts or lectures, and even having a grand experience if they were to rent this for, say, a reception or a grad party. And that would also be in view of our stage. We have a little outdoor stage that we've popped up next to one of our barns. And so that is also where our performers or exhibitors stand when they're addressing people outside. And what's so great about that pavilion space that you're within sight of 8 of our buildings, from the rear of the Loop Harrison Mansion to the Banner Cabin, an 1880 cabin that survived the Great Thumb Fire of 1881, the Decker Log Barn. We use it for storage today, but it's one of the oldest hand-hewn log barns in the state of Michigan. Its approximate age of when it was built was 1850. We have the Huckins Schoolhouse, which is one of the original one-room schoolhouses of the Croswell-Lexington community on the southern edge of Sanilac County, and a hunting fishing cabin, which was built in the 20th century by a veteran of World War II when he was a teenager. We have the Houndtown cabin, and I'm just going down the list, but this patio is right in the center of all of it. So you're having a great programming, you're having great music, and you get to then just be surrounded by this cultural heritage and history. We have a few other projects that we're working on as well, including our educational programming, trying to revamp them, as well as curating some new exhibits and trying to do outreach for traveling exhibits that engage pop-ups in pep assemblies at schools or in classrooms. So we have a lot of big goals for 2025, but we are also trying to work further on our newest addition, our 18th building on our grounds, known as the Aitken House, which was also called the Bark Shanty House by some of the community because it was next to the Bark Shanty Marina and next to the Port Sanilac Lighthouse, which is the only lighthouse in Sanilac County. And there was a crowdfunded fundraiser that raised $75,000 from the community, and we've moved it to our site right in the center of the western ring of our village. And we're trying to continue to renovate it and restore it to resemble a 1920s lakefront cottage experience.
Wow.
And we're still putting a lot of time and energy and resources into that. And our budget for that is about expended. So we're trying to raise more money for that and get that project going. And there's even more buildings and grounds projects to do. Well, another thing that we accomplished last year, I'm speaking for 2024, is an electrical grid infrastructure. So in 2024, we've already invested just over $40,000 in electrical grid improvements. We've had a new transformer added to our grounds to help alleviate the electrical amperage load, because in 1960, when this home was electrified, it was given a transformer that was solely intended for the Loop Harrison Mansion. And since then, my predecessors of this organization have added a dozen buildings to the infrastructure here, and we've only hotwired them with some in-house electricians. But the transformer and its amperage capacity has never kept pace with this expansion. So we were long overdue for this. And so we've tripled our amperage capacity to match the slug load of our historic village. And we've also upgraded several electric panels that are a couple decades old as well. So because just previously we were having a huge challenge with overloading our electrical system, tripping breakers, and overheating our panels.
Oh, wow.
And so we haven't had any incidences of that since we've done all these upgrades. And so we still have a few more phases of that upgrade. A few of our buildings are still on the old, outdated system. So we'd like to also raise funds and earmark fundraising efforts to get those tapped into that new transformer as well. I can go on and on. There's never nothing to do here at Sanilac County Museum.
You guys are doing great work. You mentioned crowdfunding. Do you have a specific website that people can go to for the crowdfunding?
So if they'd like to make a general donation to us, they can go to sanilaccountymuseum.org, and there's a donate page there, and they can direct funds to support us through our PayPal. However, we also have many opportunities that we list and post on our Facebook. You can find us if you search Sanilac Museum, and there's many opportunities such as a separate PayPal page for the Pavilion project. We still need to raise a few more $1,000 in order to be comfortable and confident to deliver a satisfactory product in spring of 2025.
Okay. Now, would you talk a little bit about the rental? So where do they find the rentals? What do you rent?
We rent out the Forestville Church. You can find more information about our rentals for receptions or weddings or vow renewals. Just call us at 810-622-9946 or email us at sanilacmuseum@gmail.com. We even have the space of the Loop Harrison Mansion. It's a 20-room Victorian mansion that is an amazing exhibit that we have that we maintain here as the main headquarters and cornerstone of our museum. And people can have small, intimate weddings of roughly 30 people. The church on the back end of the property can seat 100 people roughly for a nice traditional style walking down the aisle experience. And just in 2023, we did another project that we accomplished, which was adding bathrooms and an air conditioning central air system. And that really has upped the premium experience
That's got
of
to be nice.
utilizing that venue.
Yeah, very cool. Dan Finn, let's take a short break and step away for a few minutes.
All right, let's take a step back and come back refreshed.
Listeners, we'll be right back after this quick transition where we share important information about becoming a volunteer and supporting the Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village, and Museum.
In the heart of Port Sanilac, Michigan, there's a place where the past comes alive. A place where history isn't just something you read about, but something you can experience. The Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village, and Museum invites you to step back in time and discover the stories that built this beautiful community.
From early pioneers to the great maritime heritage of Lake Huron, this museum showcases the rich history of Sanilac County and the people who shaped it. But this important work doesn't happen without the support of generous individuals like you. The Sanilac County Historical Society relies on donations and sponsorships to preserve the past and keep these stories alive for future generations. Your support helps maintain the museum's incredible collection of artifacts, restore and maintain 18 historical buildings on a 10-acre property, and provide engaging educational programs and entertainment for families, students, and history lovers alike.
Whether you've spent years enjoying the museum or you're visiting for the first time, your contribution can make a real difference. Your donation will help preserve historical treasures, fund restoration projects, and ensure that future generations can experience the history that makes Sanilac County so special. Every dollar counts, and your generosity can help ensure the stories of the community continue to be shared for decades to come.
If you believe in the importance of preserving local history and heritage, please consider making a donation to the Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum. Visit us online at sanilaccountymuseum.org to learn more about how you can contribute, or simply reach out to us by phone at 810-622-9946. You can also send us an email at sanilacmuseum@gmail.com to find out more ways to support our mission. Located at 228 South Ridge Street in Port Sanilac, we are a welcoming place where history lives, and with your help, it will continue to thrive.
So, what's your connection to history? Join them today in supporting the past and be part of something truly special. Your donations make a world of difference.
The Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum. Preserving the past and inspiring the future.
Visit sanilaccountymuseum.org for more information. Thank you. Hey there. Have you ever wished museums and historical societies had their own version of an Oscar or Emmy? We've mentioned this on Preservation Oaks before, and guess what? There is an award like this. Let me introduce you to the American Association for State and Local History, or AASLH. You can check them out at aaslh.org. AASLH is an incredible organization that champions the work of museums, historical, and genealogical societies across the country. They're all about making history more meaningful and accessible, which is definitely a mission close to our hearts. We like to think of them as kindred spirits of the Preservation Oaks podcast because we both believe that preserving history is a heroic effort that deserves recognition. Now, here's the exciting part. Every year, AASLH hosts their Leadership in History Awards to honor exceptional achievements in the history field. These awards are like the gold standard for excellence, celebrating everything from groundbreaking exhibits to engaging public programs. Except for the publication award, they're not competitive, so every project is judged on its own merits. You can find them on the aaslh.org website under the Programs tab, and then click on the Awards menu option. Let me give you a quick rundown of some of the award categories. The first is the Award of Excellence. This is the main award, recognizing exceptional projects or lifetime achievements. Then, there's the Albert B. Corey Award, given to volunteer-run organizations that show outstanding creativity and dedication. There's a History in Progress Award, reserved for the most inspiring, innovative projects like the best of the best. Then on to the Publication Awards, presented annually to books of exceptional scholarly achievement in a variety of state and local history subjects. Finally, there's the Award of Distinction, which is a higher-level personal award given infrequently and only in recognition of long and very distinguished individual service. And the winners? They come from everywhere. Big cities, small towns, and all types of organizations, proving that history connects us all. Nominations can be made anytime, but have to be submitted by February 1st or March 1st, depending on the award type. Awards are presented in September each year. This year's winners include projects that are inspiring, creative, and deeply impactful. A few standouts. The Children's Museum of Indianapolis collaborated with the Emmett Till Interpretive Center for a traveling exhibit that explores Emmett Till's legacy and sparks conversations about social justice. In Missouri, Landmark Builds celebrated Joplin's 150th birthday with a Lego competition where teens recreated local landmarks. How cool is that? So, why does this matter? ASLH's awards aren't just about trophies. They're about raising the bar and inspiring others. They show us that history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding our present and shaping the future. If you're part of a museum, historical, or genealogical society, or a dyed-in-the-wool history lover, consider joining AASLH. You'll find information about how to join on the membership tab on their website. Your support helps them keep the history community thriving. So, hats off to the 2024 ASLH winners. Each of them is a real Preservation Oak organization and individual in our nation.
And now, back to Preservation Oak.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. I'm your host, Sean Radcliff, and we're here today with Dan Finn from the Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum, located in Port Sanilac, Michigan. Dan Finn, let's pick up where we left off. Welcome back.
And welcome back to everyone listening. I have so much more to tell you.
I'd like to ask, are there any annual events or festivals that visitors should mark their calendars for the upcoming year?
So one very successful event that we've been doing now for roughly 2 decades is the annual holiday event, Haunted Village, which we do every second and third Saturday of October for a Halloween-themed fundraiser activity for the community and the public to enjoy. We're starting to attract people from 2 counties over to attend because for an admission price of just $5, you can come to Sanilac County Historic Village for a trick-or-treating experience, going from building to building with our volunteers, passing out candy for their children. We'll have a creepy cafe with hot cocoa and other concession treats like s'mores and hot cider. And we even pop up a classic cartoons Halloween cinema where you can see some Mickey Mouse and Tom and Jerry and Looney Tunes with a Halloween theme to the episode under our event tent at the cement patio that I previously mentioned. That will hopefully be a pavilion for this coming year's one. And we even sell popcorn to go with that little cinema experience. And we also have the lighted trail. So as we decorate our 18 buildings, we also have a nature trail that we set up with lights, and we have volunteers that are spooking people out of the darkness of the woods when they walk down the spooky trail. But if that's a little too terrifying, we also have a soft, friendly kiddie trail, and that has some cutouts of some recognizable cartoon characters, namely Nightmare Before Christmas, as well as some other friendly little ghosts that the children, the younger children, can walk down, and it's also nicely illuminated with a pleasing visual. And so that is something that we've been doing for 2 decades, very successful. It's a great fundraiser. It raises 5% of our annual budget. Another program that we do that raises 5% of our annual budget is the online auction fundraiser that we do in late February. So in 2 months, we will be launching the online auction. So this is something that anybody can engage with. All of your listeners can find our online auction. So if they look at our Facebook page, they'll be posting links to it, but it'll also be on yourcharityauction.com. So if you type in yourcharityauction.com/SCHS, standing for Sanilac County Historical Society, they can find our auction page. And so we'll be going live in late February on February 18th. And for 10 days through that period, they can submit bids. And when the auction closes, for everyone who satisfies the balance due, that is a very healthy balance of our operating budget that we raise from this auction. And the auction includes experiences, antique premium furniture, but we have experiences like progressive dinners or rides in a Model T or trips out on a sailboat. So it's a great opportunity to support us, and it raises quite a considerable amount of money compared to the expenses that are involved with it.
Now, if somebody joins the online auction from another state, let's say, and purchases something, do you ship?
Yes.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for that. The thing I think is cool about your village is the Barn Theater. Can you tell us about any upcoming performances or plays that will be staged there?
So the performance season for the Barn Theater is from Memorial Day, late May, up until Labor Day, so beginning of September. And they run shows every weekend on Friday and Saturday at 8 p.m. in the Barn Theater. And that is managed and done by a separate entity that we're in partnership with, Port Sanilac Arts Council. They run the Barn Theater Company. And so they collect the money themselves, they run the theater themselves. But Sanilac County Historical Society is the landlord for the property.
Okay.
So we lease them the barn, and they run the program and the performances. And I've been a member of the Barn Theater Company before. I've performed on stage there. And it's a very unique venue because many theater companies that you'll find across the country, their model is 2 months of rehearsal for 2 weekends of shows. The Barn Theater does 2 weeks of rehearsal for 2 weekends of shows. So it's a lot of cramming and condensing of rehearsal time and pulling a Hail Mary and biting your nails and hoping that you memorized your lines. But even if you don't, there's some impromptu improv that can get us through the scenes, as there can be some gaps and some continuity of what's on the script. But that's always a fun little hijinks that the company does that is a very unique experience. They typically do comedies, but sometimes they do some drama comedies, melodramas, but it's a very awesome community theater. It's the only community theater in Sanilac County. So they can find more information at PS for Port Sanilac, psbarntheater.com.
Thank you very much for that. I'm going to go take a look.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just really love the fact that there's a community theater that people can go and just have a relaxing night and sit and just enjoy, being there. That's great.
Well, it's very interesting of a venue as well because there's no air conditioning in this venue. So it can be quite hot in there. And also, you can't really clamp down on bats and squirrels from potentially joining the performance in the middle of the evening. Because it is a barn. It is quite authentically a barn theater.
Wow. That would be interesting.
So when you say relax, I mean, maybe it's a sweltering 90-degree summer night and the barn has caught all the humidity. Or you say relax, but there's literally a bat spinning around in the air above the stage, and you are more captivated by looking at the bat than the actors performing the script. So how can you really relax and enjoy with things like that? But that is the authentic experience you can come to find at the Port Sanilac Barn Theater.
Oh, that's great. Are there any entertaining or notable anecdotes from your organization's history that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I could give you quite a few. So the organization really always tells stories of the family that lived in the Loop Harrison mansion. That is part of our mission statement, to tell the history. And a lot of the history of Port Sanilac and Sanilac County has been captured or experienced through the lens of Dr. Loop and his family. And, Ada, who was the daughter of Dr. Loop, the only child of Jane and Joseph Loop, she raised money from the community to give the local Methodist church a bell. And she was also a community piano teacher. The Steinway piano we have in the mansion is the original piano that she taught many members of the community. And that ties together even more when you talk about one of the other pioneers of Port Sanilac, Uriah Raymond. He opened Raymond Hardware Store, which is now today the longest consecutively operating hardware store in the state of Michigan.
Oh, cool.
And he is a pioneer of Sanilac Township. He was one of the founding members of the municipality. and was a supervisor and postmaster for Bark Shanty. And his granddaughter had an autograph book. I mean, that was an activity I even did in the 90s as a youth, was having an autograph book to go around to people in the community. And we had an autograph book from one of Uriah Raymond's granddaughters, Mammy Raymond. And in there was the signature from Ada Loop, her piano teacher, as well as William Aitken, the individual that the Aitken House is named after.
Yeah.
So we're just tying in all of these names of this community together with just one adolescent's autograph book. But it really helps these stories come alive, that they, in fact, did live at the same time and talk to one another and have a social community.
Yeah. It's great that you're there to do that.
Yeah. I mean, to preserve it is to upkeep this institution. This institution is no joke. I mean, we call ourselves the Greenfield Village of the Thumb. And for your listeners who are from all over corners of the globe, the Greenfield Village is this very prominent institution of the Henry Ford Museum. And that is a very premium experience there of several acres, several buildings, and a multi-million-dollar annual operation. We, on the other hand, are 0.01% of their operating budget, but we compare to them of having similar real estate, of showcasing historic buildings, docent work of sharing our history, as well as events and programming that we invite the public to enjoy.
That's great. Thanks for that. Now, what do the visitors have to say? You've got this historic village and a museum. Are there any noteworthy visitor experiences or testimonials you think might highlight the impact of your organization?
Yeah, I was just sharing this anecdote or testimonial. I don't know what you really would call it, but see, this is the home of Dr. Loop. And in here, we have authentically medical notation in a library here. And really, it's just behind a glass panel in a cabinet. Nobody really bears any mind in this day and age of this technological era with screens. You know, they see books, they say, what a nice ornament piece. Nobody ever thinks to take the book off the shelf and start flipping through the pages. But we had one guest with a tour in our mansion, which is our museum, and he noticed that. This man himself is a doctor, a modern doctor of the 21st century, and it piqued his interest that there was a library of medical journals and notations. He begins reading some of them, and he tells me that the notations are tracking symptoms of the patient, and he is diagnosing the patients of the past of 150 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the notations are saying, we don't know what it is. We're going to try this. We're going to treat it with this. We're going to do that. As he's reading through these notations of 150 years, he's like, I can tell you it's this. You would then treat it with this. That's a blunder to treat it with that, because really it's going to cause this. So you need to do that. So this modern doctor is engaging with the medical notations of our past.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. That's a great story. Thank you for that. Gosh, you should do a lecture or some kind of a talk about that. That's really great.
Yeah, maybe in due time we'll put something together.
Yeah. Now, what exhibits are currently open to the public, and what themes or stories do they explore?
So right now we are in this off season. You know, Port Sanilac itself, you know, just like the Barn Theater and really our industry as a tourist coastal town, we're not really that relevant until Memorial Day. And then our real breadwinning period of activities and revenue to pull in from the general public is through the summer, and then it caps off after Labor Day. And that's sort of the bellwether signal to everybody to make the town a desolate ghost town. So, you know, we are typically very open to the public in that period in the summer. And many of the buildings are available because we have docents, our volunteers and members will be available to take guests around for a tour of our historic village and see inside our 18 buildings in the mansion. But anybody can come to the museum. Someone could call us today and set up an appointment, and we can schedule one of our members to be a docent guide for them and let them into our mansion, tell some stories about our history, and take them for a walk through our grounds. but we simply are just not generally open to the public without some advance notice, because we are trying to, with our limited budget and our limited staff, do planning and fundraising just to keep the lights on and to get fresh paint put on the correct buildings and manage a lot of upkeep of other projects. So we just can't simply be open to the public and be just twiddling our thumbs for that one tumbleweed of a person that comes by Port Sanilac in this very low time of activity.
Right. But you would be there from Memorial Day through Labor Day. You would have someone there if somebody stopped by.
Wednesday through Sunday,
Yeah.
from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. We'll be there with our bells on. But anybody, like I said, can set up an appointment with us in advance, and we'd be more than happy to accommodate someone in some off hour.
That's great. Thanks. And they can just call 810-622-9946.
That's the one.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you for that. How often do you refresh your exhibits in the Loop Mansion Museum?
So we have one of our board directors. He's really taken it in stride to refresh some of our exhibits, and it's really uplifted its exhibition. We have several exhibits inside the Loop Harrison Mansion, and I'll go over it real quick. We have 2 parlor rooms that has furniture of the family, and it showcases how the family lived. Our dining room area that is often used as literally a centerpiece for dinner fundraisers and activities and tea parties. And we even have a rendition of the doctor's office that features a medicine cabinet, some 19th century medical instruments, and even Dr. Loop's original University of Michigan medical diploma. But upstairs, we have even more history to share. We have 3 bedrooms dedicated to all 3 generations of the family. And then after that, we have a nautical history exhibit that is in dedication to Stanley Harrison, the grandson of Dr. Loop, who donated the mansion and its grounds to Sanilac County Historical Society. Stanley Harrison was often referred to by the community as Captain Harrison, as he was a Great Lakes sea captain that would be manning boats that would navigate through Lake Huron and Lake Michigan, and maybe even sometimes Lake Superior. So we have a nautical history exhibit that has many paintings and pieces that tells the stories of the Great Lakes, the ships that navigated them. And we even have in another room a military history exhibit. And that has pieces and artifacts and uniforms from the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, Vietnam War. And our board director, one of our board directors, Gene Dennison, he has been making new info panels and new photos, graphic designing, some new information to be put on display adjacent to these exhibit pieces. And it really just updates it, uplifts it, makes it easier to consume the information. Just last year, the nautical history room was just clustered together in a very inefficient manner. And he came in, moved some things around, moved some things out, moved some things on top of other objects. And now it's easier to navigate in that exhibit and actually consume the information and history that is available in that exhibit. So it's just something that we take in stride with the resources we have available. But most importantly, the volunteers who have the passion and the drive and the vision to see it through.
Right. Very cool. Now, do you showcase parts of your collection anywhere outside the museum, like at the local VFW or library or post office or anywhere like that?
There's a few programs and traveling exhibits that we're trying to implement and execute. We also are looking at doing some traveling engagement into the local school districts and featuring that in some community centers and libraries as well. We're having some talks of that. But one of the major engagements that we do with the schools that we've been doing now for several decades as well is school days at the museum. So in late May, we invite the 2nd grade class of all the local school districts to bus their children over, and we give them a 3-hour experience at the village grounds, and we take them through 10 different activities and experiences. We have a tight schedule. We split them up. We, on average, have roughly 100 kids. We split them up into 10 groups of 10. And we cycle them around for 15-minute increments with a lunch break in between. And they'll do things of witnessing a blacksmith demonstration, hearing some lectures about our history, and a little dress-up activity in the Forestville Church.
Oh, very cool. That's a lot of good work. Are the artifacts in the museum stored in temperature-controlled environment? Are there some in a vault? Are the paper ephemera artifacts stored in acid-free containers?
Yeah, we store many things in sterilite containers, acid-free containers. We have a few things in storage and a few items in a safety deposit box. But with our limited resources and the upkeep of maintaining our several buildings, we just don't have the funds to have many temperature-controlled exhibits. So we have, as I mentioned before, 18 buildings. Every one of those buildings has a purpose, has a use. Some of those are used as storage buildings for our operations. Others are exhibits that can come alive with a docent to be a living history experience. And unfortunately, one of the challenges we're facing right now is varmints. We have squirrels that are making dens inside our exhibits of our outbuildings, and they could even defile some of our items. And it's just a real juggling challenge of how do we prioritize 18 buildings and what do we focus our resources on? Because if we try to fund and address all these issues at once, we'll accomplish nothing but run out of our budget very quickly.
Right.
We've given them a lot of shelter for habitat. And another huge piece of these grounds is we have a plethora of black walnut trees here. And the black walnut that originated all of this forest came from George Washington's estate. So we had a black walnut that one of the family members of the Lou Pearson family brought over here from Virginia and started essentially a black walnut forest on our grounds.
Very cool.
And this has been growing now for 150 years. And so that being said, we're going back to the squirrel population problem, but we have 18 buildings for shelter and we have a black walnut forest. That is Squirrel City, if I've never heard of one.
That's a mecca for squirrels.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Now, Dan, many museums and historical societies are currently working to digitize their collections. What are you guys doing about that?
So we have Past Perfect, and that's very limited in what we can do. And we're working right now of how to continue digitizing our items and put those better in documentation so it's at our fingertips for reference. So we don't have it all put together yet, but we have quite a database compiled on Past Perfect, one of the programs that many history preservation institutions use. And some others are looking at making an SOP process with a spreadsheet format to continue to also document everything we have. And it's a very never-ending project because 18 buildings, imagine how many artifacts can be put in each building.
Oh, yeah.
And then you multiply that on. And so that is truly the challenge we have in monitoring and tracking everything we have here.
Now, you described some of the crowdfunding and the rental funding. Is there anything else you want to say about your funding model and any financial targets you hope to reach in 2025?
We have many events. You could essentially say every one of our events is a fundraiser. So by paying for a premium dollar ticket for our dinner events, a margin of that is just being a baseline donation for our organization. We have opportunities for building sponsorships. So with those 18 buildings, you can donate $300 and we'll put your name or whatever business or title you want on a plaque that we then put on a pedestal in front of one of those 18 buildings that you sponsor. And then we also do a shout out of PR on our email newsletter that has over 1,000 subscribers. I think we're actually at 1,500 now. And we also have 8,000 followers on Facebook. And so it also, each sponsor gets its own shout out post at the end of the year as we renew our sponsorships for 2025.
I haven't seen many organizations that do that, but that's a really good model where you have them sponsor one of the buildings and then you put a plaque up. And it's a reasonable price for a business or an individual to sponsor too.
We also have our patron sponsorship as well for $500. And I mean, if somebody would like to donate several $1,000s. We have several projects to meet. And like I said, we just don't have the funds to do it all at once. And so there's not a concern that the money won't just sit there if a donation is made. There's another opportunity as well. We have a foundation that was started a few years ago called Sanilac County Historical Foundation. And so that has a principal fund of several $100,000 that matures and performs in the market. And then the museum receives a distribution of 4% of that. And so that secures a fraction of recurring revenue. And that revenue is a modest 7% of our operating budget. So if they want to help that number, if they want to make a considerable donation, they can reach out to us to figure out how they can make a donation to the Historical Society's foundation. And that, if you want your money to just lie there and sit and the money works for, like, make your money work for you instead of spending your money and then the money's lost, that's an opportunity. Because if the foundation's principal increases to, say, $2 million, a 4% distribution of $2 million is 80 grand.
Oh, yeah.
And 80 grand is what it costs to fund our staff on an annual basis as of right now. So it'd be great to have our foundation at $2 million, because then we could fund our staff at its current form in perpetuity.
Oh, that's great. Now, beyond annual room sponsorships and building sponsorships, you have memberships that people can get. How attractive are those?
Absolutely, we have memberships. So memberships are not as glory to have your name put in front of a building and be broadcasted across the internet. But we have memberships available starting at a baseline of $45. So for just $45 for a senior individual, you can become a member of Sanilac County Historical Society. And you can find more information about that on our page at sanilaccountymuseum.org. Just become a member on the donate page.
Yeah, lots of ways to donate, and they're all good. Now, do you guys do any lectures, that kind of thing for the community? How do you reach out to the community and engage people in learning about history?
Yeah, we do lectures. So we've been hitting an average of half a dozen lectures every year. And we really need more attendance for that. Some of our lectures, we have the freedom to be able to post online with a live video. But, you know, some of our speakers, they don't want their presentation to become public domain. We're going back to that topic because then it cuts out their benefit. But another thing that I really want to get out to the public is really get into that progressive model of making more content online and share some groundbreaking research for the public to consume for free on the internet. And hopefully, if we get enough of a following and appreciation and interest, our channels may be monetized to help more revenue to keep the engines going here.
Yeah. Are you reaching out to any students at local colleges or history majors or anything like that to help?
We're in talks with a few history enthusiasts and a few history scholars, but that is on our to-do list to reach out to educational institutions of higher ed.
Well, that's a great idea to build something like that with the channels. Now, do you have a newsletter, or when people get a membership, are they automatically subscribed to the newsletter?
Yes, they are. Yes. And in fact, they're even given first right access to some of our events that sell out, our ticketed events. Some events sell out very quickly within 24 hours. So members get first dibs. And so they get that newsletter before the general public does. We have a general newsletter of roughly 1,500, and our membership letter is to around 200, 250 people.
Oh, cool. Now, many hands make light work. And we've talked a little bit about the volunteers and how great they are and your pool of volunteers. What kind of things do you have for people to do if someone is looking to volunteer?
I mean, I mentioned that in the beginning of this interview. We have several committees that do things. We have a Tea Party committee. We have a Building and Grounds committee, a Curation and Archives committee. We also need to form, I was just talking to the president about this, about an education committee of how we can continue to revamp and engage opportunities for the youth in education. What outreach programs can we do? And, you know, Buildings and Grounds is, I'll just repeat that again. We have 14 gardens, 18 buildings, 10 acres. There's a lot of work to be done. And some things we just let go fallow because it's not worth the effort. We have to constantly engage between what is a priority and what is urgent. And we have the dinner committees that help put on our dinner fundraisers. And then every big event could form its own committee as long as people are with the program of bolstering success for whatever that program is.
Right. Hey, I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information for the organization once again. You can reach them on the web at sanilaccountymuseum.org. You can find them on Facebook at Sanilac Museum. You can email them at sanilacmuseum@gmail.com. You can visit them at 228 South Ridge Street, Port Sanilac, Michigan, 48469. You can mail them a letter at P.O. Box 158, Port Sanilac, Michigan, 48469. And you can phone them at 810-622-9946. That all sound right?
Yeah.
All right. With all this fascinating history, I feel like we've traveled back in time. Let's take a quick break before I get too far behind on the quantum time zone.
Thanks for keeping us on schedule.
Listeners, we'll be right back after these important messages about making a donation to the Sanilac County Historical Society and Sanilac County Historic Village and Museum. What a wonderful place to be all year round. If I lived in Sanilac County, I'd be at the Historic Village all the time with its trails, the events, the theater, its park-like setting, and just to relax, hang out, and enjoy every day.
In the picturesque town of Port Sanilac, Michigan, history isn't just something they study, it's something they live. The Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich heritage of this beautiful region. Whether it's telling the story of early settlers, showcasing the maritime history of Lake Huron, or preserving the buildings that shaped their past, this museum is a treasure trove of local history. But here's the thing. The museum's doors open, its programs thrive, and its historical collections are cared for thanks to the hard work of dedicated volunteers. It's people like you who care about history, who want to give back to the community, and who enjoy sharing stories. That's what makes all of this possible. The Sanilac County Historical Society is calling on volunteers to join their passionate team. Whether you have a deep love for history, a talent for working with people, or a knack for maintaining significant buildings, there's a place for you. Volunteers play a critical role in everything from greeting visitors, leading tours, assisting with exhibits, or helping with special events or educational programs for local schools. And if you love working with your hands, there's always something to do to help preserve the museum's historical buildings and artifacts. Volunteering at the Sanilac County Historical Society isn't just about giving your time. It's about becoming part of something bigger. It's about connecting with the past and helping to share that connection with others. You'll meet incredible people who share your passion for history, while making a tangible impact on preserving the stories and culture of Sanilac County. The museum offers a variety of volunteer opportunities to fit different skills and interests. You can choose how you want to contribute and know that every hour you give directly benefits the museum and the community. Volunteers get the chance to interact with visitors, learn about the region's fascinating history, and even be a part of restoring and preserving artifacts that tell the stories of the past.
If you're looking for a way to make a difference, if you have time to share and a heart for local history, then Sanilac County Historical Society is the place for you. Volunteer today and become an important part of preserving the rich history of Port Sanilac and Sanilac County. To learn more about volunteering, Visit SanilacCountyMuseum.org or call 810-622-9946. You can also email sanilacmuseum@gmail.com to find out how you can help. Located at 228 South Ridge Street in Port Sanilac, the Sanilac County Historical Society's Historic Village and Museum is a place where your passion for history meets your desire to give back. Every volunteer plays a vital role in ensuring that the past is not forgotten, but passed on to future generations. So why not lend a hand and help keep history alive? The past is waiting for you. Join us today and become a part of the legacy.
The Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum, preserving history with the help of volunteers. Visit SanilacCountyMuseum.org for more information about how you can be a part of the journey.
Now, listen carefully to what I'm telling you. I want you to get up off of your overworked bottom and immediately connect with your local historical or genealogical society and volunteer to make a difference in your community and the people all around you. Before you even think about saying no, remember that little weekend you had last summer at the lake. Well, I've got the pictures to make your life utterly miserable, you little twat. Now get up and get going. You hear me? I said do it now.
You're listening to Preservation Oaks, where new episodes are created for you every 2 weeks. That's 26 episodes per season. Let me see, that's like 182 in dog episodes. Right?
Bored? Yearning to hear something new? Well, you're about to be satisfied. Picture this. An episode of the Preservation Oaks podcast from Hawaii, where you'll learn about a hidden temple and bathing complex used by the Queen and the royal family themselves, just dripping with intrigue and history. That's all covered in episode 2 with Dr. Paul Brennan. Now, try to think about something else. Can't, right? Well, you don't have to, because Preservation Oaks is available anytime at preservationoaks.podbean.com or wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate it very much when you like, subscribe, or follow us to hear every satisfying episode.
And now, back to Preservation Oaks.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. I'm your host, Sean Radcliff, and we're here today with Administrator Mr. Dan Finn from the Sanilac County Historical Society. Let's pick up where we left off. I'm learning a lot, Dan Finn. Can't thank you enough for spending time with us today. Welcome back.
Yeah, glad to be back with you and your listeners.
I want to give you an opportunity to promote, discuss, and educate people about the Society's website. What kinds of information and resources can visitors find on your organization's website?
Yeah, so you can, first of all, join a member on the website, but there's also information about the historic village. And so we have 18 buildings, and you can read about most of those buildings and its history of what they've experienced. And you can even read about the history of the family, the Loop Harrison family, and hear more stories than what I was able to talk about on this broadcast. And you can link that as well to our Facebook, which is our very active hub of all of the events that we put on. And you can even make a donation through our PayPal, finding a link there on the website. There's a few books you could buy there, but honestly, we really need to take some time and revitalize the website and make it a little more modern and accessible to edit. Right now, we do coding for it, and we don't have it through any private vendor like Wix or Square or Bluehost. We do the coding ourselves. Yeah.
That's a lot of work.
I mean, that's just what we inherited because somebody else set it up. And instead of reinventing the wheel, we're just continuing to move the wheel along, even though it can get a flat tire every now and again. So,
yeah. Well, cool. A lot of good stuff on your website. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, and so, yeah, we'd like to work on a new website. And so we'd love like a volunteer who can help us incorporate that and designing it and building a new one that can be easier to manage because it with coding, I mean, you can do a comma wrong and then the whole thing crashes. So you always save the previous draft to make sure. But, you know, there's times when we update our sponsorship opportunities on there. That's the main reason why we go on there. And because you can pay for those building sponsorships that I talked about earlier on the website. So, yeah, you can read about our history, become a member, donate, and find our Facebook. We don't have a database of historical records to find, but I would recommend going to our district libraries. The Sandusky District Library has an amazing database of history archives that you can find there within Sanilac County.
Oh, cool. All right. Thank you very much for that. Dan, what approaches are you taking to inspire young individuals to participate in your volunteer efforts and contribute their skills?
I mean, that's a really important question that I think many organizations are asking in this day and age, especially when many nonprofits and historical societies like ourselves are facing a age collapse of just the median age is too high and it needs a new generation to take over. Myself and my assistant were 31 and 26 between the two of us. So we are the next generation, but how do we get our peers involved with this organization to carry it and move it forward? And we're looking at a program like Shadow a Docent, where we would invite a high schooler or a college student to walk with our docents as they give a tour of the museum and the village grounds. And that could hopefully inspire those individuals to want to continue and participate in taking on that torch of preserving and promoting our history. We have a few other young volunteers that help us with some technology things and giving input, but we really need people who are confident in themselves and confident in their career path and status so that as they're taking care of themselves, they can pass on their prosperity to an organization like us.
I had one museum that I interviewed who did a summer program every summer that was called Junior Docents, and they would bring children in, school children. I don't know what grade level. Maybe it was high school kids. I don't know. But they would bring them in and they would train them for, a little while. And then they would take over being a docent for a particular section of the museum.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we should really adopt that ourselves.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's a great idea you have about the docents. That's good. Can you share some of the unique ways your organization benefits the community and explain why these contributions matter?
Well, Sanilac County Historic Village and Museum has become a community venue. So we host many important, vital events. Most namely, we host the community Easter egg hunt in the beginning of the year, and we close out the year with the Christmas lighted trail. Many institutions put on nice little lighted displays for people to bring their families and walk and have a holiday cheer. And we also fill that need that benefits the public. So there's a lot of volunteer work and staff resources to go to making that possible. And there's a huge risk of very little financial gain. We raise a very measly amount of resources of donations financially from the public who come to enjoy things like our Easter egg hunt and Christmas lighted trail because there is no cover charge. Because we want what is most important is people to have their feet on the ground and witness the nice jewel that they have available for them all year round. These contributions matter. because that allows us to continue to offer that to people who may not ever have the resources or may not have the resources at that time to help us out. But they need help themselves having a third place to be outside of their work or outside of their home, another place to engage or disconnect from their lives and reconnect with their roots and heritage.
Yeah. And nature too.
Yeah. In the Squirrel City.
Yeah. Now, if your organization had access to unlimited resources, what dreams or big projects would you pursue, and how would that change how you operate?
Well, if I had access to endless resources, I would continue to be what I am calling myself as the infrastructure administrator. I've already invested $50,000, which is a quarter of our operating budget annually, into infrastructure improvements. We've added parking lot lights, and I previously mentioned a new electrical transformer for our electrical grid infrastructure. We've been updating electric panels and lighting throughout the museum, and we're even improving on pathways that witness a high volume of traffic that on certain conditions become a muddy, wet soup. We're covering over with the investment of gravel. And we're also trying to invest in better infrastructure engineering to reduce on the rot of our building infrastructure. So if I had endless resources, I'd really tap into that, trying to mitigate water damage on our 18 buildings and trying to just engineer things so that, say, the endless resources are for like a shopping spree grab of a limited time. I would use those endless resources to invest in our property so that if those resources just stopped all of a sudden, that the museum would reduce its maintenance year over year and could exist in perpetuity without the risk of decay and rot if, say, resources just fell under completely.
All right. Does the county assist you in any way with the...
Not at all.
Okay.
We don't get $1 of county tax dollars. Even though we call ourselves Sanilac County Museum, some people assume that we receive money from dollars collected from the county tax.
Yeah.
We don't receive a single penny. And that is really a huge PR battle that we have because many people assume that.
Yeah,
and so our locals assume, oh, they're doing well, they're doing fine, thanks to my tax dollars. And so those locals that would be, should be, could be a contributor, sponsor, supporter, think they already are doing that passively with their property taxes.
All right.
And that is far from the truth.
Now, does the Historical Society do any genealogical consulting and research support for the public?
Absolutely. Yes, that is available. We have a committee of volunteers there that take a great passion in that. And we have a library of all that information and resources available. We charge a modest fee for extensive research if it's requested. However, it is free for people if they want to come here in person and look through our archives. As long as we are supervising it, we can't allow unsupervised viewing. But if you want us to research the genealogy that we have in storage here, we just ask for a donation that starts at $35 an hour.
Okay, cool. Thanks for doing that for the public. It's really important.
Oh, yes, very important.
Dan Finn, as a history enthusiast, what do you think the world will look like 100 years from now?
Well, we're currently in this advent of the AI revolution as people are beginning to adopt it more into its utility, and AI is also adapting and improving itself as it's becoming, I don't know, I'm about to say sentient, but it's a weird question of how a technological algorithm can compile so much information for reference and be able to accomplish so many things. So it's really hard to say what 100 years from now will look like. It was AI that was known as Skynet for the plot of Terminator.
Oh, yeah.
So
Terminated.
That is something that we're really not even fully cognizant of, that we're really grappling with right now. And even with the base of our monetary system is very outdated because we've untethered ourselves from precious metals since the Nixon administration.
Yeah.
So, and since then, we've been on this model of the military of the United States backing the petrodollar with the oil exchange, but people are trying to be more energy alternative. And so that threatens the sanctity of the hegemony that we have with the petrodollar. And so that also changes the landscape of the world order if people really want to get off oil, because our entire value system is pegged to the US dollar, which is pegged to the use of oil.
Mm-hmm.
So, if people want to go to something alternative, then do you not do the dollar anymore? If you're not doing oil, if the US no longer has hegemony, or does the US continue to have hegemony? And what is the new monetary system, if not the petrodollar?
Yes.
There's something to question about another technological advancement that we don't have grips on is cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Is that something that we'll continue to see in 100 years with a new international monetary exchange? And so how does that shape us? Because globally, as you encounter people, things really revolve around the commerce and economy of the United States. So will there be a new nucleus of our world order, or is that all interconnected? These are serious questions to ask and to look out for what that determines the landscape to be in 100 years.
I remember watching episodes of Star Trek, and there were several episodes where they mentioned the fact that their society didn't rely on money any longer. They weren't paid for things, and you didn't have to pay for things in order to get things. They never really explained it that I recall, but I think we've got to head in that direction.
Well, there's an imbalance that we have of a finite resource and infinite resources. And I mean, one thing that it has the illusion of being finite, but is actually infinite, is US dollar. When you have the Federal Reserve being able at discretion be able to print more of the funds that are available, and then be able to purge that with a snap of a finger. And then at the same time, you have other tangible resources that are finite, like clean water is a finite resource, but could be infinite with technological advancements. So that's something that can ebb and flow. Some people say that Bitcoin is a finite resource, which is why it is a viable alternative international monetary currency.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you go back to that vision from Star Trek of to no longer need a monetary currency to acquire resources. How do you do that of guaranteeing there's those resources to be available for everyone? Because that's another thing that people speculate in 100 years is water. What is the finite availability of clean water for the people of the world in 100 years? And that's something that will determine the landscape of our future.
Yeah. Good points. Thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Is there any other additional message or important information you'd like to share with the community or your members?
I think Sanilac County is a pretty interesting place because it is another world. You can step out into this region and it's a different frequency. You're not existing in the hustle and bustle of the urban areas. And it's in a time warp in itself just to be in this region, let alone just stepping on the grounds of Sanilac County Historic Village and Museum. Many trends or ways of doing things culturally are 15 years behind. We're more active here on Facebook than the rest of the metropolitan area is. The rest of the metro area is splintering off into these alternate social media landscapes and have been for some time. That's just one example. I mean, there's many things culturally that the thumb in Sanilac County does separate from the rest of the state of Michigan and the country. It's somewhere where you can just escape and remove yourself from the hustle and bustle. And what a better place to do that than Sanilac County Museum, where we do over 36 events. We have the Port Sanilac Farmers Market that we host here every Friday from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. And we layer that with educational programs, free music concerts sponsored by Sanilac Consortium for the Arts, and Reading Rainbow at the one-room traditional schoolhouse. And then in the evening, you can attend a show at the Barn Theater through the summer months. Come and join this community and become a member of our historical society, where we really try to lean into that now as a society, as we are a collection of people who are trying to assimilate a foundation of a mutual identity and respect for our cultural heritage.
Very cool. Great comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Dan Finn, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. It's been enlightening to hear all that you do and your organization does for Sanilac County community and your members. This conversation has been truly a pleasure. I'm so glad we got to connect.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. Likewise, it's always a pleasure. Very, very happy to be exposed to your podcast, and I look forward to the exposure that we have to many of your listeners. Thank you so much for taking the time.
You're welcome. And with that, we'll end our time with our guest, Dan Finn, from the Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum. Listeners, please stay tuned for my comments and wrap-up, which is coming up next. And there you have it. What an incredible conversation with Mr. Dan Finn, the administrator of the Sanilac County Historical Society, Historic Village and Museum. A big thank you to Dan for taking the time to share his wealth of knowledge and passion for preserving the rich history of Sanilac County. It's always a privilege to hear from someone who's so deeply connected to the place they represent, and Dan truly embodies the spirit of dedication, intelligence, and authenticity that this museum stands for. Now, I sometimes receive comments and emails encouraging us to take a more critical approach in interviews to challenge our guests a bit more aggressively. And while I appreciate the feedback, let me be clear. The purpose of this podcast is not to scrutinize individuals or single out what people might be doing wrong. It's about something much greater. This podcast is dedicated to showcasing the incredible work being done by historical societies, museums, genealogical societies, and organizations across this nation that are preserving our collective history, our shared heritage. That's a much higher calling, a more important mission, and one that we're honored to support. I encourage each and every one of you to take the information from each episode and use it to drill down deeper, and to learn more about the places we visit, the historical figures we mention, and the events that shaped our nation. Do some research, ask questions, and connect with these societies. You'll find hours of enjoyment and knowledge, and I promise it will enrich your life. Now let's take a closer look at everything that makes the Sanilac County Historical Society Historic Village and Museum such a hidden gem. This place truly has it all. 18 beautiful preserved buildings, each telling a unique part of the story of Sanilac County's history. From an active theater to fascinating artifacts, this museum is a thriving hub of education and community. And it's not just the buildings that impress. It's the people. The dedicated volunteers and passionate staff who keep this place alive are what truly sets it apart. Their love for history and for sharing that history with others is palpable. And it makes all the difference in how the museum comes to life. And let's not forget about the town itself, Port Sanilac, Michigan. Situated along the picturesque shores of Lake Huron, it's the kind of charming coastal town that feels like a getaway from the everyday. With its rich maritime history, cozy cafes, unique shops, and even a historic lighthouse, Port Sanilac is a place that invites you to slow down, relax, and take in the beauty around you. Imagine strolling through the historic village, learning about the past, and then unwinding with a cup of coffee, some fresh fish, and a breathtaking sunset over the lake. Honestly, just talking about it makes me crave a visit. Who wouldn't want to experience that vibe? What really makes this museum stand out, though, is how it brings history into the present day. This isn't your typical museum where you just look at artifacts behind glass. No, this is a living experience, Whether it's hands-on activities at the schoolhouse, the spine-tingling Halloween spook walk, or the seasonal events that really bring history to life, it's all about making history accessible, fun, and engaging for everyone. There's something about experiencing it that makes the past feel real, and that's what keeps people coming back. And I can't stress enough how important it is to recognize the depth of history this museum covers. It doesn't just highlight the European settlers or the maritime heritage. This museum tells the whole story. From the indigenous communities who were the first to inhabit the area, to the settlers who followed, to the industry that grew along the shores of Lake Huron, this museum offers a complete picture of the history that shaped this region. It's history with heart, authenticity, and a commitment to telling the real stories no matter how complex or difficult they may be. As for the events they host, wow. Victorian dinners, Halloween spooky fun, and let's not forget the summer stock performances in the Barn Theater. These events aren't just entertaining. They're a way to immerse yourself in history, to be a part of it, and to connect with the people who have shaped this corner of the world. And if you're a photographer, get ready. This place is a dream. With stunning gardens, historical buildings, and reenactors in period costumes, there's no shortage of amazing photo opportunities. They also have seasonal events that really make you feel the spirit of each time of year. Christmas carols, tree lighting, path lighting ceremonies, old-fashioned games for the 4th of July. It's a place that celebrates not only history, but community and tradition. It's educational, inspiring, and yes, a ton of fun. So after spending this time exploring the Sanilac County Historical Society and all it has to offer, I have to say I'm hooked. The buildings, the stories, the events, the people, and the undeniable charm of Port Sanilac make this a must-visit destination. If you're looking for a place where history comes alive and you can learn, laugh, and relax, this should be on your bucket list. For those of you interested, be sure to check out their website and Facebook page for more information. You'll find details on the 2025 seasons, shows, events, and even an upcoming silent auction in February. You can visit them online at sanilaccountymuseum.org or check out their Facebook page at Sanilac Museum. You can even drop them a line at sanilacmuseum@gmail.com if you have any questions or want to get involved. Oh, and if you're planning a special event, did you know you can rent the church or a part of the museum for your wedding? Now that's a way to make your special day even more unforgettable. To wrap it all up, I give Sanilac County Historical Society Historic Village and Museum a solid 5 out of 5. So please, by all means, donate to this worthwhile cause. Sponsor a building or a room, then volunteer and help. You'll feel great for doing it. Become a member so you can receive the newsletter and get first dibs for the events. It's a place where history isn't just preserved, it's lived. I'm excited to see what the future holds for this gem, and I hope you'll take the time to visit. Who knows, maybe we'll bump into each other over there. Thank you once again to Mr. Dan Finn for being our guest today, and to all of you for tuning in. We look forward to continuing this journey with you as we explore more amazing places and the passionate people preserving our history. One final time, I'd like to provide listeners with the contact information. Their website is sanilaccountymuseum.org. Also, Dan told us that there's a silent auction happening in February. I think it was February 18th, if I recall. But you can visit the website there at yourcharityauction.com/SCHS. The Barn Theater website to view next season's playbills is psbarntheater.com. Their Facebook is at Sanilac Museum. Their email is sanilacmuseum@gmail.com. Their address to visit is 228 South Ridge Street, Port Sanilac, Michigan 48469. Their mailing address is P.O. Box 158, Port Sanilac, Michigan 48469. You can phone them, and I hope you do, at 810-622-9946. If questions occur to you and you'd like more information, please connect with them via the contact information provided. If you're a listener in the area the organization serves and you're not already a member, please consider joining and supporting them. I hope this information helps the audience understand how valuable the organization is to the community and what kinds of excellent services they have to offer to their members and the public. The Sanilac County Historical Society Historic Village and Museum is truly one of our preservation oaks. All right, that's a wrap for this episode. Music used today is from Cymbalbird, Stereo Color, Mr. Claps, Diodo, Score Wizards, Lucky Black Cat, Airport Music, Floruz Music, and Scott Holmes. Microstream Radio is a registered trademark. You can visit us at www.microstreamradio.com. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted by Microstream Radio. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere without the written permission of Microstream Radio. Hopefully you found today's episode useful, informative, and thought-provoking. If so, please like, comment, and subscribe. Remember that being free means being free to be curious, and that historical and genealogical societies and museums allow us to discover the past, be free to explore, where curiosity opens every door. Thanks to everybody for listening. Stay curious and keep exploring the incredible stories that shape our world. This is Sean Radcliff. We'll see you all next time on Preservation Oaks, and until then, keep on giving and keep on living the good life.